Welcome to Behind the Scenes with Music and the Spoken Word. I'm Derek Porter, and today we have the very special opportunity of having Richard Elliott, Principal Organist for the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, here on the show. Welcome, Richard. We are so grateful to have you here.
Happy to be here, Derek. Thank you for the invitation.
I have been amazed to realize that you have been here at the Tabernacle here in Salt Lake City, Utah, for more than 34 years, playing that incredible organ, contributing to the weekly broadcast of Music in the Spoken Word, and doing so much more. Would love just to hear a little bit at a high level about these 34 years and about some of the experiences that you've had and you felt during this time.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. It's gone by pretty quickly, but there's been all kinds of wonderful experiences, as you can imagine, during that time.
You know, you mentioned earlier as we were talking that you played for the 4,000th broadcast as well as the 75th anniversary. And as you think about those times and then going back all the way to the very, very beginning, now spanning all of these decades, what is the role that music has played in your life? What has it meant to you?
Yeah, music for me, and I'm sure for most of the people that listen to the broadcast, is something that's been with me, all my life. Our mothers sang to many of us when we were just infants, and I can remember my mother singing to me. That's one of my earliest memories, and having her playing the piano in the house. And my grandparents loved music, so I was just surrounded by music all the time. And also in church, music was such an important part of the worship experience, and so it's just been a tremendous blessing to be able to make my living as a musician and doing that and sharing that with other people. So whether you're somebody who just appreciates it and listens, or somebody who's doing it professionally, I think music is it's truly a gift from God, and something that blesses our lives and opens up a channel of communication with the heavens and also with other human beings. We feel that connection all the time in the work of the choir, and that's something that feeds our spirits to feel that connection with those, whether they're in a live audience or whether they're watching online or on TV or listening on the radio.
So where did it all begin? What's your earliest memory of maybe playing the piano or an organ or an instrument? And what began this lifelong pursuit for you?
Yeah, well, when I was probably about 6 years old, my mother had been playing something on the piano, and then she told me later that I walked over and then started playing the same, kind of picking out the melody and everything, and so she knew that I had a gift for it. So in first grade, they had a little piano class at my elementary school, so she signed me up for that, and I loved it. And we didn't even play on a real piano. We had these little wooden keyboards that you kind of, and the idea was that you would kind of practice there in the room and then go home and do it on a real piano. But so that kind of took, and then I just stuck with piano lessons for a long time, and then at age 15 was invited to play the organ in church, and then that's what guided me into the organ.
And tell us real quickly just the history of this organ, because it's an instrument that has been around for a long, long time.
That's right, Derek. Yeah, most people don't realize that the organ is much older than the piano. The piano was invented, I think, in the 1700s. The organ's been around since basically the first century BC or AD. There was an organ unearthed in current-day Hungary from, I think, 79 AD. And back then, organs were used for sporting events, things like that. But it's an amazing instrument that for centuries was considered the most complicated, the most complex of all engineering feats up until really the 1800s. So it has a wonderful history. Lots of great music has been written for it. Mozart called it the king of instruments. Bach, of course, was a phenomenal organist and composer for the organ. So it's got a rich history, and that's what draws a lot of people to its music and to the instrument itself.
So is music constantly running through your mind, or take us into the mind of Richard Elliott? And what does that feel like? It's such an integral part of your life. Is it always there?
It is a lot of the time, which can be a curse and a blessing. But most of the professional musicians I know are just always thinking of music that they're learning or performing or composing, and so you just it's just like a second language, and it's always going through your mind, whether it's good or bad. So sometimes pieces I've written, there's a part that I don't like that I think I could do that better, and that'll just keep going through my mind until I fix it or
you can hear it. You can just hear it and see it.
Sure. Yeah. So different people respond different ways. Some people actually see colors or have visual impressions of music. For me, it's more just the aural impression. I mean, rhythm is an important element, and melody, harmony, but all those elements, when you've done a lot of musical training and especially work in ear training and music dictation, you get to a point where you can literally look at a piece of music on the page and envision how it sounds in your mind.
Now, I've heard rumor, and I need to confirm if this is true or not, that you used to play a major role in a rock band. Is that true?
I did. I played in bands from about age 14. I just got a group together with some classmates at school, and then started playing, really for money. When I was 15 or 16. I kept it up until I was about 23, but really kind of dropped out at age 19, where I really decided to get serious about the organ and about classical music. But I played with two very well-known bands in the Baltimore, Washington, Pennsylvania area, and we would play for dances and play in clubs, mostly on the weekends. And I also was playing for money, at my Lutheran church. I was raised a Lutheran in Maryland, and started playing there at the age of 15. So, I would be up late at night, Saturday night, doing rock music, and then getting up early Sunday morning to play in church. And the contrast was quite stark. And I think that's one of the things that really moved me into the direction that I took, because I could see that the rock music, it was fun to play. It's fun to make that much noise, and the energy and making people happy and seeing them dancing. That was fun, but I got the impression really that we were just a temporary distraction really from whatever challenges they had in their lives. Whereas Sunday morning, the music there, the hymns, the sacred music of the choir really served to, give people tools and open up channels that blessed them and made them better people. And so there was a real stark contrast there that ended up guiding me first in the direction of organ music, and then later in the direction of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I joined when I was 23 years old, and then that changed my whole direction.
Wow. Thank you. I've never heard you play any rock music yet, but I have sat in that tabernacle in the upper eaves on the far back area, and I have felt my seats rumble.
Sure.
Literally rumble as you have played the organ. And so it's just kind of a celestial rock band, I guess, in a way, in some ways.
Yeah, organists, we do love loud sounds and things, and the balcony of the tabernacle, that rear balcony, that's where the builder of the organ back in the 1940s loved to sit, and that's where you really get the full impact. It's almost stronger there than it is on the organ bench.
Really?
So it's a total surround sound experience.
So tell people about this organ. I've seen it, and this thing is like, it feels with all the buttons and controls and air vents and camera and things that it's like flying an airplane. I mean, it's a complex instrument. Describe for us just a little bit about the complexity of the organ at Temple Square.
Yeah, actually, coincidentally, one of my former organ students is a pilot, professional pilot for a major airline, and also is one of our volunteer guest organists who plays the tabernacle organ regularly. And he's told me that it's more complicated than landing a big jet, which I'll have to take his word for that. But it is. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that can go wrong. And we've all had the experience of being there on Sunday morning and playing through the broadcast, and then you press the wrong button at the wrong time and get a sound that's totally different from what you had intended. And so you do have to over-prepare, and we have some tricks that we do just to ensure that we don't get into hot water more than we normally would. So it is people ask me all the time, how long did it take you to learn to play this complicated instrument? And I often talk about the 10,000 hour rule, and that for any kind of physical skill, whether it's sports or music, that you have to put in that much time. And that's definitely true with an organ. Most organists start on the piano just so you can learn how to read music and read keyboard music and play a keyboard. And then the organ goes a lot farther because your feet are playing notes and you're having to operate all of the controls and understand what kinds of sounds are available and how to combine those into a recipe that makes musical sense. But it's one of the joys of that. I'm in my late 60s now, and it's still as much fun, and there's still things I'm learning at my age about playing the organ. So it's one of the great things about the arts.
So how many layers of keys are there on an organ?
There are some organs that just have one single keyboard for your hands. The standard in our church for our chapels is two keyboards for the hands, one for the feet. The Tabernacle organ in the conference center have 5 manual keyboards, and then one for the feet. The largest organ I've played has 7, and then I used to be an assistant organist in Philadelphia for the largest functioning organ, the Wanamaker organ, which has 6 keyboards. So that was the organ I really kind of cut my teeth on. Okay. So it almost felt like coming down to come here and play these organs that are actually slightly smaller than that, but still quite complicated.
So let's take the organ at the Tabernacle. So 5 layers of keys. How many different stops are there roughly?
So in the Tabernacle, it's about 157 what we call speaking stops that actually are connected to a set of pipes, and then you have have dozens of controls that look like the same knobs, but that have other functions, like connecting one set of pipes to a different keyboard from the one that it's normally resident on. So there's a lot of different controls there. There's some that control not pipes, but actually percussion sounds. On the Tabernacle organ, those percussion sounds are actually created mechanically. There's a harp stop that has little metal bars that are struck by hammers and amplified, and then a set of tubular chimes that are also hit by hammers. On the conference center organ, it's not really practical to have those mechanical sounds because they wouldn't be heard in such a vast space. And so those are digital samples of real harp or chime stops.
And how many pipes in the Tabernacle? So
the Tabernacle has 11,623 pipes. The conference center organ's about 2/3 that size with 7,708 pipes, but you could fit 6 tabernacles in the conference center building, so that organ had to be really voiced to the max. So those pipes are larger scales or dimensions than those in the Tabernacle, and the wind pressures on the conference center organ are also higher. So it actually generates more sound if you're measuring the decibel level. The conference center organ is louder, but it has fewer pipes than the Tabernacle organ.
So one of the most fascinating things for me as I watch you play is my mind can get wrapped around playing with your hands. But it goes to a whole new level when I watch you play with your feet. And even just this last Sunday on what would that have been, May 25th broadcast, we watched this incredible organ solo with your feet. How did you learn to do that? How did you learn to become so good? And how do you keep it straight between hands on 5 levels, 157-ish stops, and all of those various, pedals, if you will, and keys on the floor? How does that work?
Yeah, I've been, when my kids were younger, I took them to the circus and I watched the acrobats and the jugglers and everything. And I realized that it's the same kind of thing, that you just have to take it a step at a time. So on the organ, the secret to adding the feet really is to start slow. So you just play very slowly at a very slow tempo where your brain can manage all of that, and then you gradually increase the speed and the complexity of what you're doing. So it's the same as with juggling. You start with just 2 or 3 balls, and then a person can work it up to 4 or 5 or whatever, and adding other things in there. So the brain can do amazing things, but the initial stages take a little bit of discipline, just doing things slowly until it feels natural, and then you build up. And then, over the years, I learned some pretty difficult things in my undergraduate work, and then later, I injured my arm at one point and had to not play with my hands for a few months. And so during that period, I also gathered up everything I could. There were pieces that were written for just the feet alone. There are, from like the organ music of Bach, there are, you can buy a book that has just the parts for the feet, so you can just focus on those. So I just drilled my pedal technique during that time.
Incredible. Well, it's a joy to get to watch. Another fascinating aspect to me as I've watched you play, and to do this in a live setting with millions of people watching, is through the art of improvisation. And you've had some experience with this. And I'd love to just hear from you about how you're able to make up music on the spot to match the meaning. But maybe before I ask this, let me just paint this picture for those who are listening and watching today. So each week, I have an opportunity to share a spoken word message, 400 words, 3 minutes or less. And very often, as you are the organist for us, that specific portion, you will have what looks like sheet music up on the Tabernacle organ. But when I went and inspected it, it was not sheet music. It was simply my spoken word.
Right.
And then I learned that instead of reading sheet music, you were reading my spoken word message and improvising music to match the feeling of the words that I was giving. Tell us about that experience and how that comes about and how that works.
Yeah, organists and jazz musicians are really, in current, at least American music situations, are the ones that do the most improvising. Organists have to do it in church just to kind of fill the spots and things. And doing what I do under the spoken word is a little bit different from that. But the basic procedure is, I'll print out the text for your spoken word messages, and then just see for each section of it what kind of feeling it elicits just for me. And if I put myself in the place of the average listener, I think, what would I be feeling? What kinds of mental visual images would I have during this section? And then I mark it up, and then I figure out what kind of a general mood I should set with the music, and then where I should change keys and maybe go from a major key, which is a little brighter and a little more happy, to a minor key, which is a little more somber and contemplative, or even sometimes neither one. If you have what's called open fifths, it's a very stark feeling that just kind of just sets a very, very different mood where there's some ambiguity there. So I'll do that, and then print it out, put it on the music rack, and then fortunately we get your spoken word recordings, the audio and video recordings ahead of time. So I'll pull that up on my phone, put it up on the music rack, and then pretend it's Sunday morning, and then just see what happens. So I know what key I'm starting in, I know what kind of melody I'm going to be using in general, and what kind of feel. But then I just see where it goes and where things shift and where I really want to, where you're coming up with a new or fresh idea, and then I want to make sure that at that point the organ also is giving a fresh idea. And that's organists for many, many years before talking movies came about in the early history of film. Organists had to play in theaters and accompany what was up on the screen, and that's actually the closest corollary to what I'm doing now. So I actually took a class a few summers ago with the resident accompanist at the George Eastman House in Rochester, New York, who it's the largest repository of silent movies on the planet, and so he did a Zoom class, and I went through that just to learn what he does when he's watching something on the screen and has to provide that kind of accompaniment on the spot.
Incredible. And you mentioned as well, which I'm putting together here, the choir ends a song in a certain key, but it doesn't mean that the next song they sing after the spoken word is in the same key. So not only are you doing what you mentioned, but you have to transpose, if you will, from one key to another so that the choir and orchestra is ready to come in at that same time. So you also have that complexity to manage.
That's exactly right. So I map that out. That's part of the whole equation. It's called modulation in musical terms, is when you start in one key and then you move to a different key. So I usually try to pick up on the key or a similar key that's related closely to the one of the preceding piece, and then I have to set up the piece that follows so that it'll sound natural and not jarring.
There's a lot of moving parts there. I'm glad that the majority of time my spoken words are recorded, because now that I know what it takes to do your job, if I was giving this live, I'd be so nervous for you that you could do your role. I think I'd mess up mine.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a lot. Same here. I'm glad I don't have to think about what you're saying specifically. I can just kind of look at the page and.
So, what kind of preparation does it take to constantly be ready to play live, seemingly without a hiccup, in front of either, at times, 21,000 people in the conference center, or weekly, millions of people that are watching?
You definitely want to be over-prepared, and the bigger the audience and the more critical the performance, then the more you tend to over-prepare and then try to anticipate things that could go wrong on the instrument. For me, I like to do a lot of work on the piano because it bites back. There's more resistance in the keys, so it kind of reinforces the motor learning and the motor memory of my fingers, so that things feel a little more secure that way. And I tend to like to memorize things as much as I can, just get as much in my brain. Even if I end up using the music on the broadcast or on another performance, it just forces you to be just a little more on top of what you're doing. The same way that you don't go to Broadway to see people on stage holding the script. You want them to have it really internalized, and so music is the same way. You just try to internalize as much as you can.
Music in the Spoken Word is nearing its 5,000th week, and by the time this airs, it will have eclipsed 5,000 weeks in a row of continuous, uninterrupted network broadcasting, which is just under 100 years. How many broadcasts have you participated in, and when did that all begin?
I'm still calculating that from all the records, but I've played for roughly 550 broadcasts as the principal organist, and then at least 125 others where I was assisting in some shape or form. So it's approaching 700 broadcasts that I've participated in, which seems like a lot to me. But then when I think of the average choir member, if somebody serves there for their full 20-year term and has 80% attendance, that's about 840, I think, broadcasts. So that's a lot more, and they're there every single Sunday, and they have to sing every piece on the broadcast except for the organ solo. So I take my hat off to the choir members for that. But it is sobering to think that I've played for that many, and that I've been there for more than a third of the time that music in the spoken word has been broadcasting. So that's I'm honored to have been able to do that.
So you're on Temple Square 5 to 7 days a week, and what do those days look like? What do you do? What is this job to be done that you participate in, and what else do you do with your talents aside from music in the spoken word? I aim for 3 hours a day on the bench, and some days that doesn't pan out, and some days you do a lot more because of the realities and what you need to do. So there are other administrative tasks. We have to field a lot of correspondence. We have a guest organist program that needs to be managed. We have to interact with the organ technicians on the ongoing job of maintaining and renovating the organs on Temple Square and the other keyboard instruments. There's all kinds of responsibilities there. So I also, in addition to the broadcast, the organists have to play for general conference and for tours of the Tabernacle Choir, or their travel assignments, for recordings, the Christmas concerts, firesides, things like that. And then I get invited to go to other churches or concert halls, universities, and play organ concerts. So I'll be in California next weekend and Arizona the following weekend doing those kinds of things.
So there's a lot to do in this job, and it's the speeding train that never stops, has been said about the choir and the choir organization.
Yeah, isn't that true? As you think about your 550 plus associations on a Sunday morning here on Temple Square, participating in music and the spoken word, are there any moments that stand out to you?
There are definitely broadcasts that were extra special for many different reasons. My first official broadcast was May 19th of 1991, so that stands out. That was just the culmination of many years of hard work and admiring the choir and admiring the organist, and then to sit on that bench and finally do it was a very moving but also humbling experience. And then shortly after that, the choir actually left on a 3.5-week tour of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union at that time, which was an amazing experience. And we did 3 different music and the spoken word broadcasts from there, one from Budapest in Hungary, one from Vienna, Austria, and then one from the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. And so those were really special, I think, for all of us, because they represented the choir making new friends and also exploring territory that had been off limits for many, many years. And we had people in the audiences there in Hungary, in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and at the time in Russia, who had never heard of the choir or never been able to listen to sacred music, and who were obviously very, very moved by the experience. So those were extra special. And then just personally, over the years, there have been times when I've come there and my cup has been needing to be filled. And, we all go through personal challenges, family challenges, physical challenges. And so sometimes I would come in on Sunday morning and just, feel depleted and worried and sad about different things, and then just from the very first note of the choir singing, it vanished, and I just felt the peace of the Holy Ghost and of our Heavenly Father just wrapping its arms around me, or wrapping me in a warm blanket, and I think a lot of people have shared that feeling and experience.
So as we look back at the history of music and spoken word, what do you think the secret ingredient is? Why has it been able to last for 96 years and counting and become the world's longest running radio and television network broadcast? What is that secret ingredient? Yeah,
that's a good question. I've thought about that a lot. The certain things about the broadcasts have changed over the years, but I think the central message really has stayed the same, which is that we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are followers of Jesus Christ. We strive to follow his teachings and commandments, and we're your neighbors and your friends, and we are like you in many respects. And I think that's really one of the main messages of the broadcast, and one of the reasons why it's resonated with people, because we're really trying hard to project that and to convey our love and our feelings towards our fellow human beings here on the planet. And the choir, of course, it has a signature sound. It's a very, very large choir, and sings with great passion and feeling. And they take their commitment and their calling, very, very seriously, and that really comes through. I remember on the 1998 tour to Europe, meeting with the royal composer in Spain, who the composer for the King of Spain, who came to our events there, and he talked to me and he said, I've heard lots of choirs in my lifetime, but this choir can do things that no other choir can do. And he said, part of that is because of their size and their discipline. And he said, but part of it is just the kind of people that they are. And he said, your belief and your faith come through.
Incredible. What are you most proud of as you look back over this time? What are you personally most proud of?
Boy, I never think of it in those terms. To me, I'm just a small part of the whole organization. I remember I think it was the 4,000th broadcast, it might have been the 75th, that during or following the broadcast, they projected on the big screens in the conference center the faces and names of all of the people who had either conducted the choir or been the spoken word narrator, or been the organists, or been the choir, the choir leadership, the administration. So from the very beginning, they had photographs and names, and I remember seeing my face up there and thinking, wait a minute, I never really think of myself as being part of this whole big thing. I'm so focused on my daily responsibilities, and it was actually a very moving thing to me to think of the shoulders, that I stand upon, and the precedent that was set, and these great men and women that preceded me, and then to think about those that will follow in the future, and to just feel like I'm part of a really great thing that has blessed so many lives and touched lives. So I think that's, I'm just proud to have done my little part, and to be a part of something that transcends all of us, and it's where the sum is much greater, than or the whole is greater than the sum. Where it's our contributions are magnified because of what we're doing and what our calling is.
Well, it's certainly it's miraculous, actually, to me to get to sit and watch every single week hundreds and hundreds of people, 300 plus coming in the choir, 100-ish in the orchestra, our organists, the conductors, a backstage team of 50 plus people making this show, happen and go around. But all of these people coming together, and I feel that you're absolutely right that each of us is a part of something far bigger than any individual one of us could ever produce.
That's right.
And it's amazing to get to be a part of something that is bigger than you. You mentioned you joined the church at age 23. You're a little older than 23 now. It's a few years and decades have passed, but you're still here. Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every week and spend 3 hours on that bench and come here to Music in the Spoken Word and display these talents to the world? What is that driving force and feeling that is within you? How would you describe that?
I think there are two main components to that, and one is just that it's so satisfying, to serve others and to do something that you really love that brings others joy. But more importantly, I feel a sense that I've been led to this place, by my Heavenly Father, and that He's the source of any gifts I have, and that as long as I'm able to exercise them in a way that's satisfying and helpful to others, then I'll do that. But I'm also keeping an ear attuned to when that's no longer the case, when somebody else needs to fill those shoes. And so I think when we put ourselves in God's hands and consider ourselves instruments in His hands, then that's really the source of the greatest satisfaction and feeling of worth and usefulness. And so that's a key element in me continuing to do what I do, and who knows where it will lead, but that's where I am right now.
Thank you. Well, Richard, it's been so great to be here with you today and to get to talk and learn and feel and understand more about the incredible contribution that you've made to Music in the Spoken Word for these 34 years, and hopefully another 34 and counting as we continue forward. But we're, on behalf of so many people, we honor you, and we're grateful again for the sharing of your talents and the humble and sincere way that you go about that. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners today of anything that's on your mind or heart?
Oh, I always go back to God be with you till we meet again, which is what we sign off with. The choir sings that to the audience every Sunday morning, and so my thoughts are always with those who are watching, and hoping that they will know that God will be with them, till we meet again. And I play that at funerals all the time as an organist, and I love the sentiment behind that we'll all be together, united one day.
Again, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here on the show with us today.
Thank you, Derek. It's been a pleasure.